My friends, good day. Today we're going to talk about a blind spot in aviation safety, something nobody talks about. As a teenager, I used to visit the Oran Flying Club in Western Algeria. One day, I overheard a conversation between two instructors, and one said to the other, "You can't take on a student pilot for their initial training if they're stronger than you. You know, if he's more muscular than you, if he has more muscles than you, if you weigh 51 kilos and the guy shows up all shy for his initial training and he weighs 110, you have to say stop and pass him on to someone else. There's an inherent danger in this imbalance between the student and the pilot. We're going to see it today with this story that illustrates it perfectly, and I'll tell you right now, there are so many other examples. We'll talk about them on other occasions. So we're going to Virginia on October 6, 2022. We have a young woman. Her name is Viktoria Ljungman. And then Viktoria is a student. She is 23 years old. She attends a local university. And at the same time, she studies aeronautics, like many young people at this university. There is a department for that. And they work in partnership with an aero club that does Part 91, Part 141. And then typically they do their theory at the university and fly at the aero club. And once they get their private pilot's license, they are quite quickly given the instructor's license. So they become CFIs. They'll then train other young people like themselves. It's a bit crazy if you really think about it, because we have a system that McDonaldizes training and takes people who don't yet have enough experience themselves to train others. So in reality, we have a break in the chain of transmission, because imagine a driver who is 20 years old, passes without a driver's license, and 6 months later, he himself is a driving instructor. That would be unimaginable. But in aviation, that's how it works, unfortunately. So this young woman will become an instructor in April 2022, and then she's all proud. She poses in front of a Cessna 172, which she'll be working on. On October 6, 2022, she has about 330 flight hours in 75 agreements as an instructor. So now 2 other people who go to the same university as her are going to get involved. There's a young man, he's 18 years old, and he's originally from Nigeria. We'll call him Bo. The name is very complicated. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I'll call him Bo as he was described in the press. All-terrain camouflage, we don't really have any photos of him. But you should know one thing, she's a young woman of Swedish origin. She's 23 years old. You can see in the photos, she's extremely thin. So generally, if we compare her to an 18-year-old young man, she will usually be at a disadvantage in terms of pure strength. So that's a big problem. Then, this young man, since he's nervous because he's about to have his first flight lesson, he's never been in a cockpit, he's never flown a plane in his life. He's going to bring a friend of his who's a bit more advanced. He has his private pilot's license and he's preparing to become an instructor. He's also 18 years old and he's going to join them. So around 2 p.m., they're going to get into a Cessna 172 airplane. It's a high-wing, single-engine propeller plane, very simple. Everyone has flown a Cessna 172 during their initial training. Very easy to fly, a plane that forgives everything, even stalls. There's nothing tricky about how it handles. It's simple. Even if you land it roughly, it'll just bounce gently and settle back down without any problem. So everyone in their life, every pilot has been rough with a Cessna 172 at one time or another. So they're going to get in. The engine starts, 180 horsepower, a classic Lycoming for this type of aircraft. And then that's how they're seated in the aircraft. We have Mr. Bo, the student pilot, who is seated in the front left, which is normal. All instructors will put you on the left in the plane. If you're ever alone, you'll fly on the left in the cockpit. So he sits on the left, she sits to his right, and then the friend who comes to watch and encourage sits on the back bench. So they start taxiing for the moment when everything is going well. They line up on the runway. At that moment, she contacts the control tower, asks for permission to take off, and the permission is granted. And at that moment, what she's going to do is tell the student pilot, All right, we're going to gently increase the throttle. I'll accelerate, and then there will come a moment when I'll ask you to pull back on the control stick. You'll pull back on the stick to take off. So she's an instructor. We can admire her for that, even if there's still a bit of unconsciousness in the background. She's an instructor who, right from the start, wants to involve or give her student the maximum freedom, the maximum opportunity to act. Because there are other instructors who don't do that at all. There are instructors who, the first time take off for you, take you to a safe altitude, and it's only then that slowly they give you the controls. And it will take several hours of flying with them before they let you take off. Touch the controls during landing and takeoff. But she's the kind who wants to get the person involved and confident as soon as possible. That's a good point for her. So, as I was saying, in training, there's a very important briefing that needs to be repeated all the time. It's about handing over the controls. That means the instructor tells you, my controls. When he says that, you let go of everything. Hands like this. And you put them on your thighs. Right away, instantly, my controls. There you go. This briefing, it seems, was not done. It was not done properly. In any case, not in a memorable way. Neither for Mr. Bow nor for the companion. Sometimes the instructors do something else. For example, they might tell you, follow me on the controls, I will pilot and you just follow me. That way you don't resist, you offer no resistance, you just follow to feel what I'm doing. But in this specific case, such an exchange did not take place, it seems, in any case. The plane speeds down the runway. And then afterwards she says to him, now you can take off, pull back on the control stick. So what does he do? He pulls the control stick back. The plane rotates, it starts to climb, and he keeps pulling. That means the correct action to take off in a Cessna 172. Honestly, you apply the throttle. In reality, most of the time you actually end up holding it down a bit so it doesn't take off by itself. So there's that. Then when you want to take off, you just need to pull the yoke back a little and it will take off. And then what you do is guide it. When you think you've reached the right angle, well, you don't let it go any higher. So from time to time, it requires you to push or pull slightly, but that's it, just very small, gentle movements to keep the climb path correct. What does he do? He pulls on the stick, the plane lifts off, it leaves the ground, and he keeps pulling until the stick is literally all the way back. At that moment, the plane is pitched up. It's pitched up at 30 degrees. There was actually a RIC aviation pilot who was with his student. He looks and he sees that this Cessna 172 is extremely pitched up. He described it as pitched up 30 degrees at about 200 feet above the ground. That's 60 meters. So this instructor, literally starts screaming because she wants to push slightly. Because what happens when you keep the yoke pulled back like that is that the speed will drop. Since a Cessna 172 will never have enough power to climb at a 30-degree angle. So what will happen is it will lose speed, and there's not much speed. We just took off. And then the result is that it will stall. So she realizes that, so she's going to start yelling at the student pilot to give her the controls, to let go of the controls. But he's panicked. He doesn't understand what's disappearing. So he keeps pulling because instinctively for him, and honestly, we can't really blame him, knowing that even airline pilots have made similar mistakes. What does he think? He believes climbing means pulling, pull harder, go higher. But this game, well, it has its limits. She realizes the plane will crash, but he doesn't understand. And she wants to push. But since he's stronger than her, and here we come back to what I was telling you at the beginning, that it's very difficult. There's a risk in training a student who is stronger than yourself. If the student panics and grabs the controls, whether he blocks them by pulling, pushing, whatever he does, you won't be able to counter him. He's stronger than you. And so what will happen is the plane will stall. Obviously, it will lose speed. So it climbs to 200 feet anyway. Why? Because the throttle is fully open. So that will slow down the stall a bit. It will keep injecting energy into the system, but it's a lost cause. So at some point it stalls. The left wing suddenly tilts. So it's almost on its side, literally. The nose drops below the horizon and the plane heads toward the ground. You can probably feel at the moment when the plane drops, the guy, the student pilot, lets go of the controls. Probably at that moment, he realizes there's nothing he can do and he lets go. On this wing, she grabs the controls, she brings the wings back to horizontal, she tries to recover, but you can't recover a plane that has stalled at 200 feet. You're heading toward the ground. You don't have enough altitude to stall. For your information, stall exercises are done at 3,000 feet. So just to let you know, we lose several hundred feet during a stall. So at 200 feet, there's no chance. So what's going to happen is that the plane is going to go down. And then maybe to make things even worse, there's a ditch. There's a ditch. The ground is green, calm, all that, nicely rolling. And unfortunately, the plane is going to fall into the ditch and hit one of the ditch's walls. That means it's like hitting a vertical wall all of a sudden. If it had fallen a little further, let's say 2 meters further, the plane probably would have slid for some distance. The energy would have been lost more slowly, let's say, and so at that point it would have given the occupants a better chance. You should know that the more a plane slides when it falls, the better it is for the occupants. It's more survivable. Here the aircraft stops abruptly. There's someone calling on the radio and saying, not from this plane, just a voice on the radio telling the controller, we've got a crash, we've got a crash. With that, the firefighters are going to rush to the scene, and then what they're going to find is that the Cessna did in fact crash into the ditch. We can see this deformation happening violently, literally. We see this deformation that corresponds to a sudden acceleration. So the entire tail of the aircraft is deformed. The engine block literally went inside the cabin. Out of 3 people, 2 we have the student pilot and his friend who are sitting in the back, who are injured. We'll evacuate them to the hospital. And the instructor, she was declared dead at the scene. So she lost her life that day. The National Transportation Safety Board will start its investigation. We're going to talk to the student pilot. When he comes to the interview, when he responds to the National Transportation Safety Board's summons, he comes with his mother and his lawyer. And then you read the report. You realize that he was probably briefed by his lawyer. He answers, I don't remember. I don't remember anymore. I lost consciousness. I don't remember the accident. I remember we were driving, and then after that, I remember waking up in the hospital. Do you have anything else to say? No. What also happened is that the National Transportation Safety Board had requested, which is also standard procedure, they had requested blood samples and urine samples. That's for laboratory testing, to check for substances or anything else. Well, he didn't give them. He only gave them 3 weeks later, which means that clearly there was also withholding of information there to let, I don't know, maybe he had smoked a joint or something. He was afraid it would show up in his tests. So he waited 3 weeks. He provided the requested samples only afterward. There you have it, friends. It ended in a tragedy that didn't need to happen. But realizing once again, it's a systemic problem. It's a problem with the American system that takes in student pilots. Because this young woman, in the end, when you look at the One Transportation Safety Board, when you look at the final report, the accident is 100% her fault. Why? Because when you're flying as an instructor, you're the pilot. You're the one responsible. You can't say it was the student pilot who crashed the plane. No, you're there to monitor them. You're there to supervise, to support, to train them. So if the plane crashes, it's on you. It's not the student pilot. So it's her, according to the One Transportation Safety Board, even if we're not talking about legal responsibilities, but according to the report, she is fully responsible for the accident. But at the same time, was she properly trained? Probably not. Why? She's young, she's not experienced, she's a private pilot. Then they quickly have her do a certified flight instructor so she can become an instructor. And why? Well, that's common in the United States. It's so that young people can build flight hours for free. Because when you fly with an instructor, the student pilot pays for the flight hour, but the flight hour is recorded in both the instructor's logbook and the student pilot's logbook. The instructor technically flies for free since he earns flight hours. And over time, this allows him to accumulate enough hours so that at some point he can apply for a job with the airlines. We only know that, and that's what makes it a factory. And we have catastrophic situations like this one. And it's not the only one, as I said at the beginning of the video. There you have it, my friends, life is destroyed. 1 person died, 2 people were injured who will be able to go on with their lives, but she won't.
Voilà. Merci d'avoir regardé cette vidéo jusqu'ici.
Let me remind you about the release of my latest book, The Titan, which you can find on Amazon in paperback format. This is about the submersible, about this submersible built by Stockton Rush, which took with it, including him, a total of people to visit the wreck of the Titanic.
Tu demandes pourquoi? Parce que
Honestly, visiting the wreck of the Titanic is like standing next to Marilyn Monroe's grave and saying, "We met her." You see, it's just a wreck. It's twisted, rusty metal in the dark. People are still passionate about it and paid a lot to go. They paid $250,000 per ticket. But the worst part is they also paid and didn't even get to see the Titanic. Here, read this book. It will tell you how human madness can cause disasters. We'll see each other in the next video. See you very soon.